about are things you can more effectively affect or manipulate than your BMR to end up in a better place with your calorie expenditure overall.
What's going on, everybody? It's your two favorite guys, Brian and Ben from 4FTV, where we cover all things faith, family, fitness, and freedom. And today, we need you to like, comment, and subscribe. Oof, got you early with that one.
First things first.
First things first. We need some more likes, some more comments, and some subscribers so we can keep the momentum going on this channel. But what we're really coming to you with today is episode 14, the fitness metrics you need to know, which are they more important than workouts? You're going to find out.
It's a trick question.
Trick question. Of course, clickbait, openly admitting it. But now, the big thing that we want to cover in today's episode is we want to let you guys know that, of course, like we've talked about fitness before, workout routines, nutrition, we've gone over hormones, and we've gone over a plethora of things. But today, we're really dialing it back into focusing on fitness and a couple metrics that you may or may not have heard. Maybe you've heard them in passing. Maybe you follow fitness people that talk about it more. But these are things that outside of your workouts and nutrition could be the major difference between you actually seeing the results you want or holding you back with the frustrations you're dealing with. So first off, we're going to start off with something I'm sure you've heard, but have no idea what it is. And that is your BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate. That's just a fancy way of basically saying it's the amount of calories that you need to sustain homeostasis on a daily basis without added exercise. What does that mean, Ben?
Well, I mean, basically, it's a non-energy based requirement of, energy intake in order to stay right where you are, which could be good or bad depending on where you are.
Absolutely.
Some of us have a very high BMR because we have a very high amount of mass on us from choices we've made. Some of us have a healthy and high BMR because we have lean tissue on us that we've added through exercise. And so, your BMR is relative. And there are some things you can do to change your BMR. Obviously, we're going to get into that a little bit. But what's even better news is that some of the other things we're going to talk about are things you can more effectively affect or manipulate than your BMR to end up in a better place with your calorie expenditure overall. So, if somebody is, here's a good example. If somebody's a smaller individual, there's a difference in sexes or genders as well, based on, our predominant hormone differences and behaviors that affect our metabolic rate. But somebody who's fairly inactive and not a very large person, let's say 25-year-old female who has a pretty sedentary job, her basal metabolic rate is going to be much, much lower than somebody who's 230 pounds and 25-year-old male, or, right around that same range, just because he has more tissue to supply with energy and to keep homeostasis with than somebody who has less.
Exactly. And I don't want you to be confused with BMR and BMI. BMI is a scam of a metric. I mean, it has validity to some extent, but as soon as you start actually getting in shape, the BMI can be extremely misleading.
Yeah.
It's just the height and weight ratio, whereas BMR takes into account like your bone density, your muscle mass, your height, your weight. There's a lot more measurements that go into your BMR, but just as Ben said, typically, if you're taller, if you weigh more, if you have more lean tissue, which means muscle, you're going to have a higher BMR. But again, that is probably let's call it the umbrella. Your BMR is impacted by a lot of the things we're about to talk through today. And your BMR can actually raise if you do all these things well, but it can also drop if you don't take care of these things.
True.
So again, we're going to get into the next metric that you may not, well, actually you do know, you've probably just never heard of it presented this way. EAT, your exercise activity thermogenesis. What the hell is that? It's just your exercises, your workout classes, you're going to the gym, your Orange Theory classes. Maybe you go to Barry's, maybe you go to Cycle Bar out there. I don't know what you're doing.
A lot of choices these days, for sure.
So many choices. And unfortunately, a lot of them can be misleading, but that's for a different episode because it has to do with goals, marketing, price points, and all that other jazz you don't want to hear about. So right now, the second metric we're talking about again is EAT, your exercise activity thermogenesis. These are the calories you're burning in your workout session. That is it. So if you work out for 45 minutes and you burn 300 calories, that's your daily EAT. You can understand how a lot of people, if you're very deconditioned, if you're very overweight, if you start working out, you will burn a lot of calories in sessions. I can remember at one point in my life, I was 300 pounds and just completely had let myself go. When I started wearing, I wear a Whoop now, which is way more accurate, but I was wearing a Fitbit back in the day and just going to like 145-minute cycling class, I was burning like 1,300 calories. And I was like, holy shit, I'm amazing. And then slowly but surely, as I got more in shape, I started burning less calories, even though I was working out harder and pushing harder in these classes. And it actually got really discouraging. And that's one thing that I just want to point out to you guys. Your goal when you're actually in a workout session, especially if you're working with Ben and I, and we have you on a strength training session or a strength training protocol, the goal is never about how many calories did you burn in that session. It's a much bigger goal. And I think if you get addicted to how many calories you burn in a workout session, you are setting yourself up for long-term failure.
Yeah. And that's, I'll just say this. It's almost like only using your EAT as a metric. It's like only using the scale as a metric.
Yes,
so
great
is
point.
it one that should be thrown into the mix of, targets or keeping on track of things? I think it can be. And the scale is definitely, don't misunderstand me. I'm not going to embrace this healthy at every size BS or anything else that's going on right now. And you can be morbidly obese and healthy and beautiful, because that's a lie. Absolutely. And it's not your better interest by any means, but there is a truth to concern when you only look at the scale. For example, I've had people that, and Brian has too, who have come in, their metabolic functions all over the place, from medications, drugs, poor sleep patterns, other life stressors and things like that. And they start eating healthy. The first thing we want to stress is like eating better food choices before we start telling you got to eat 1,500 calories a day. Better food choices, whole foods, consistency with your food choices, right? And trying to calibrate and kind of reset your normals. And sometimes I've even had cases where at first, especially with women, and they say, well, I'm not losing weight. Oh my God, I gained a pound like these last 2 weeks, right? I thought we were getting healthier. What they were when they started was skinny fat, right? So they were not at their ideal body type or shape or condition, but they think that gaining a pound equals mean that they're getting fatter. And in reality is they weren't functioning in any anaerobic stressors in regularity. So as soon as they started strength training, they started to, guess what? Get some new muscle tissue, and they started to change, their body started to change shape. And in some cases, the scale moves 4 pounds and they end up losing 2 sizes. And so again, not to take a bunny trail here, but only paying attention to EAT as a super high priority or the only priority, it's kind of like only looking at the scale.
That's such a good point. And that's why Ben and I would say any good trainer or coach out there prioritizes strength training. It has the most lifelong benefits as far as longevity, overall health, strength, even just offsetting like autoimmune and other dysfunctional diseases long term. Strength training and muscle mass on your body has a direct correlation to it. So that's why, again, we just want to say like for instance, I also have trained my mom, and she put 5 pounds of muscle on, which she gained bone density, which offset and actually halted her osteoporosis, which is amazing. So her bones aren't degenerating anymore. She's put on more lean muscle mass. She's stronger than ever, and it helped her BMR go up. And she's never been an overweight person, but she can eat even more now if she wants, which is awesome. But those sessions, again, like if you're not burning like at least, I would say like 200 calories in a session, you're probably bullshitting your session. I will say that. But you're not going to get the 500, 800, 1200 calorie sessions, especially when you're strength training and doing proper rest periods. But the muscle mass that you're building, the bone density that you're building are all things that actually impact your BMR down the road and your long-term health. And just like Ben said, here's another thing you need to think about, which is why if you only live by the scale, it's a terrible way to live, is that if you're that 5'2", 22-year-old that he mentioned, or 25-year-old, and you're, 120 pounds and you're 25% body fat, well, if you end up being 135 pounds and you're 18% body fat, sure, you're 15 pounds heavier than you were, but you're way less body fat. Body fat is the percentage of fat on your body versus the weight on your body. So if I gain 15 pounds, but my body fat's going down, that's just pure lean muscle that you're putting on your frame. And just like Ben said, how could my scale go up, but my waist could be shrinking? Because you're getting rid of body fat and building muscle.
Right.
And 1 pound, I mean, if you want to look at it, it would be like this. This is a pound of fat. This is a pound of muscle. Like, hold the same overall volume and space, but a pound is a pound. That's why I also hate the saying when people say muscle weighs more than fat. No, it doesn't. Like, a pound is a pound. A ton of bricks is the same as a ton of feathers.
Ton of feathers, right?
More.
Yep. Yep.
But anyways, that's one of the metrics that we know you guys have heard. So obviously, BMR, about EAT, which is your exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, here's the one that, there's a guy named James Smith, who's an Australian guy, former bodybuilder, like hilarious, wrote a couple books, and he and his friend did a thing called There we go. Had a little bit of delays, but you know what? It's just the enemy trying to keep us from giving you great information to get you healthier.
I stopped hearing you right at James Smith, man. You mentioned books, and then it cut out on me.
Well, just in case it cut out for all you guys listening, James Smith, Australian trainer, bodybuilder, just super funny dude, tells it how it is, very blunt, very direct. Drops the C word because it's fine in Australia.
It is.
But he and his friend had a thing called Neat Up. So like all his friends and him would meet up, but it was all about increasing their NEAT. And your NEAT is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. What does that mean? That's the fancy way of saying it's the calories you burn on top of your BMR outside of your workouts. Examples. If I go grocery shopping, which all of you have to do once or twice a week, maybe more. I don't know how often you go, probably at least once a week. Park your ass as far away from the grocery store as you can and walk, and you're going to burn more calories than if you park right next to the store. Taking the stairs at work instead of the elevator because you're actually taking steps, burning more calories. Getting up from your office job and stretching or just walking around for 10 minutes every hour or 5 minutes every hour. Or besides your exercise program, it's, can you go for a walk every day? Walking is one of the best NEAT metrics you can do because it's restorative. It helps you recover. It gets fresh blood throughout your entire body. Typically, if you had a really hard training session one day, even just doing like a little 15-minute walk or 10 minutes just cycling on a bike to get fresh blood. Exactly. And doing those walks every single day. One, you should get in the sun as much as you can, walk as much as you can, be in nature, be grounded. All those things have amazing health benefits, but they all fall into NEAT. Even if you're the nervous ticker who's like constantly fidgeting, or if you can't see it now, but if you're tapping your foot, like those are literally all measurements of NEAT. And those are one of the things as well that, yeah, obviously I'm not going to encourage you to start becoming a foot tapper if you're not, because you'll probably annoy the shit out of a bunch of people. Right. But like walking, you should be walking 30 minutes every day, 20 minutes every day. And if you break that up, it's actually really good for digestion after dinner to walk for 10 minutes. So if you just walk 10 minutes after breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you just did 30 minutes of NEAT. and you helped your digestion inside of your body, and you
Yep.
got your steps in, and you just added, who knows, it could be 100, 200, 300 more calories that you burn that day, depending on, again, your body size frame. Like for me, if I go out and walk my dog, typically, I walk, I don't know, like if we do a 30-minute walk, I can usually get like 200 calories, and I'm not really doing it for that. I'm doing it more to get the dog out and to be outside. But hey, 200 calories every day
Add it up.
is the
Yeah.
difference over the course of a year. If I burn 200 more calories, I'm either losing 20 pounds that year if I burn an extra 200 every day, or I'm keeping off 200 every like
That's a good
every
way to
year.
look at it. Yeah.
Yep. Or if I don't do that, I could potentially be either keeping myself from burning 20 pounds a year, or I could be adding 20 pounds a year, which is why every year you have to add another notch in the belt.
Right. Right.
So, Ben, what other activities have you encouraged clients with as far as NEAT? What are some sneaky good ways to get those extra little calories in?
Start pretending like you existed 30 years ago, before, 20 years ago, even before we had as many things kind of pulling us down into a seated position while we're looking at a screen, to be honest.
Like we're doing right now.
Right. Yeah. I'm looking at a screen without any effectual purpose, I guess I should say. But we're more drawn into that than ever before. And so not only does walking increase calorie expenditure, obviously, since we're talking about that, not only does it aid in recovery following an intensive workout session, but it also increases blood flow to our brain dramatically, just even the postural change, let alone the activity.
Great point.
And so we think big picture, one of the worst things for us is to be doing what the majority of us are currently doing, which is spending a couple hours, almost a day, catching up on whatever Netflix series is trending and hot at the moment.
Right.
Our kids are sucked into their phones playing games. I think a good shift or change for people would be that your electronic devices are only powered by like a rower or an upright bike. And if you want to play on your phone all day or watch TV or whatever else it is, you got to start pedaling or start rowing. And two things that happen. Everybody either get in like really, really good shape because they're that addicted to these TV shows and stuff, and it would work. Or people would start realizing like, I don't need to watch all this TV. And if I'm going to be exercising and being active in order to get this, I might as well do something I like to do. So maybe it's take the kids to the park. I mean, I really think that a lot of it, when it comes to the NEAT aspect, is looking at what we would be doing and what our species has been doing up until the last 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, it might even get us reading books again.
Yeah,
Imagine that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which is probably still safer than like walking and texting or something like that. But I think that that's a big part of it. People, whether it's family or community, used to far more often come together to do activity-based things pretty routinely, more so than now, right? And I think that in order to open our eyes to that, we have to be willing to like take our eyes off of this a lot more. There's other studies that show that watching TV, watching movies and stuff like that has a way of almost anesthetizing the creative processes and functions of the brain. And so what's a better way to get those creative juices flowing than to go walk? Like take your kids for a walk and ask them how their day at school has been today or the last week, or they started playing sports. Really, it's just being a good person, being a good parent, and then realizing that all of these luxuries that we have around us today are not things that we ever had before. Our NEAT, let me tell you this, our NEAT, like for however many thousands of years prior to like the last couple generations, was through the roof, right? And our NEAT is super, super low right now because we've surrounded ourselves with all these things to alleviate responsibility, to make things easier for us, Well,
I think I sent you a study that I saw coincidentally or ironically, I guess, on Instagram that a doctor had posted just about from like 20 or 30 up until now, so 100-year study.
Yeah.
And it was literally like right around 2000 when technological booms took off.
The biggest,
our average, like between NEAT, our BMR, just our activity levels dropped by 70% in 2 decades.
I believe it.
And like, again, just like what you're saying, it's like, hey, like, of course you need to like, comment, and subscribe to 4FTV, but man, take your kids to the park, and when they're playing on the swing set or the jungle gym or even shooting hoops or whatever, you can play with them, or listen to us while you're walking the track and showing the example of, like, you know, like there's so many ways where it's like you should almost have a rule where if I'm gonna consume, like, if it's more than one episode of Netflix, again, like, it needs to be powered by something, or it needs to be while I'm moving, which would probably just discourage you from doing it, because it'd be really annoying and dangerous to be watching something.
Just pouring sweat. Right.
But yeah, we also want to keep this episode nice and concise for you guys. So the final thing that, or metric, I should say, that you probably have not heard of and are the least knowledgeable about is TEF, the thermic effect of food. Now, basically, that just means, if you think about it, whenever you eat food, it takes energy and calories to actually digest the food that's inside of your body, which, again, you got to think of, like, what is the quality source? And if you think of highly processed things where sugar has been added, highly processed things, it's like micronutrients have been stripped away, digestive fibers have been stripped away. It's usually high combinations of carbs and fat, low protein, way too much salt and sugar added together. It's basically way too much of stuff you don't need and nowhere close to what you do need. And the problem with that is, like, even the difference of, like, eating ground beef versus steak, just chewing, the process of chewing actual food creates digestion, starts in your mouth. And the idea of eating more food slowly and chewing it and enjoying it is also helping your digestibility, but it's also what's burning more calories. And the faster we can scarf stuff down that takes no effort to actually chew and start the digestive process is typically because it's also, like we said, like, if you're getting fast food, it's way too many carbs and fat, not enough protein. And coincidentally, protein has the highest TEF out of all the macros. It takes the most energy and burns the most calories just to metabolize and break down the actual source of food itself. And one thing, I think we said it on a past episode, but when it was told to me by one of my mentors, I was just blown away by, like, how simple and obvious it is. Here's like, maybe it's not going to be mind-blowing to you guys, but I hope it is at least like a fraction of how it was for me. If you look at real whole foods like Ben and I are talking about, it's either like pure carb, pure fat, or it's pure protein, I guess, if you're going for, you know, like egg whites or protein powders. But it's either protein and fat or protein and carbs. There's pretty much nowhere in whole foods, natural food existence where high carb, high fat things are together.
Right. And you got to get a Cinnabon and a milk chug.
Yep.
You want to take them all the American way. You need a Cinnabon.
You got to get your sad diet going on to get all of that, your standard American diet. And that's the thing. It's like, when we tell you to eat your steak, your potatoes, and your asparagus, or have your fruit with it, those are whole food sources that digest in the body in, like, a specific order. And they have their natural states of how they're digested, the energy it takes. But when someone has been like scientifically, genetically modified and engineered to be like one thing, and it's way high in fat and carbs, your body legitimately is kind of stumped on how to process it. Not that it won't, it will. But when you take in high carbs and high fats all the time, your body is trying to figure out which energy source do I need to run off of. And most of the time, if you're taking in high carbs and high fats, your cells are opening up and storing fat.
Absolutely.
All you're doing is, like, well, carbs are more abundant and they're faster, so let me store this fat for later. And then all of a sudden your NEAT isn't high, you're not eating the thermic foods, you're not working out hard enough, like all those things, and all of a sudden you start burning more, or you start gaining more body fat because all you're doing is storing energy that you're not using.
Mm-hmm.
That is another reason why simple rules of thumb is typically, besides high quality food, eat your protein first in every meal, because it's satiating, it takes the most energy to digest, but also that'll be a good gauge of what you need to do. And typically, like if you're doing a high protein, high carb meal, it's usually either pre-workout or post-workout. I'm either trying to get energy and amino acids inside of me to prep for a workout, or I'm getting them in me to get out of basically the cortisol induced like parasympathetic nervous system. We're trying to calm ourselves back down. And when you relax and breathe after a workout and then start taking in protein and carbs, you can actually immediately blunt that cortisol level and start calming yourself back down again, which is also why in the morning, typically you're advised high protein, high fat, because it's satiating and it takes longer to digest, which again, it all depends on when do you work out, what's your activity like. I would never tell you not to have carbs in a meal, but again, that's why I'm a huge proponent of like, have your eggs, if you want extra protein, have your steak or chicken or whatever with it, and then have fruit on the side. You're getting a ton of protein, good sources of fat, and easy digestible, fiber rich, micronutrient rich carbs, but it's not so much carbs that you're going to be carb bombed compared to having a couple cups of rice or a couple cups of potatoes or whatever. And then again, it's kind of just, if I'm doing fast food, it's a 1,500 calorie meal, and like legitimately maybe 200 of the calories are coming from protein. The rest is all carbs and fat, and that's absurd for the body. It can't handle that, especially with how low quality and terrible the things are inside of your body.
Yeah. There's definitely something to nature's delivery methods of our fats, our sugars, and specifically sugar. I was looking into that a little bit more, and even wondering why is it certain things, berries, bananas, whatever, they have these bright, beautiful colors. And going back far enough, that was our way of locating them, our way of finding these little, like special nuggets of delight in a period of time when we really needed those fast bursts of energy to just to survive. And then also obviously for their other micronutrients, but it's this perfect, beautiful little delivery package of enzymes and bioflavonoids and other things like that really help not just with our digestive process, but our immune function and everything else. Yeah. And so what do we have now? We take all of the sugars from those things, maybe enrich or add some other, corn and fructose based sugars to them because they're not sweet enough because our palates are so jacked up. And we give these things to ourselves in like Brian said, absurd amounts of high fats, high sugars, maybe some really mediocre quality protein.
Right.
And then you wonder why you're miserable. You're gassy. You just feel, you're bloated all the time.
Tired.
You're tired. You gain 30, 40, 50, 100 pounds,
no sex drive, no libido, no happiness.
All of those things. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even, speaking of the food choices, like 80% of the information sent through our vagus nerve is related to our gut. Our digestive health is like communicating to our brain. And, that's something that still is kind of like, fairly emerging in terms of awareness and research. But there's a lot of problems that people have today with depression, with chronic inflammation, with mood, all this other stuff that can very well be at least partially attributed to terrible diet and food intake.
Yeah. And again, we've talked on past episodes too, like food quality has gone in the shitter too. Like it sucks that the government and, these big corporations are taking profits over actually making sure we're not getting poisoned as humans.
Yeah, right.
So we do have to, like, you need to shop local as much as you can. Grass-fed, grass-finished, wild, organic, pasture-raised, like as much as you can. Fit it into your budget as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, like I was thinking the other day, like, oh, but man, but this stuff's like expensive or whatever. It's like, it's just choices. Every day we make choices about where we put our money. And it's like, you want to know what's one crazy thing? If food prices keep going up, it may actually make you more aware of what you're buying instead of wasting money on shitty food
Mm-hmm.
because you have an impulse. It's like, I got $50 for this week and I got to make it create
Right.
21 meals. How am I going to do that? You're getting your rice and potatoes, get your frozen fruit, because I'll break that stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Frozen fruit is actually amazing for you, and it's actually flash frozen at the source, so it can actually have more micronutrients than the organic fresh stuff you're getting in the produce section at your local grocery stores, because that usually takes a couple days to get there versus being frozen on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's typically cheaper, so it's kind of win-win.
True.
Like, yeah, you don't get to pop as many, like it's a little harder to chew on like frozen berries without getting a little cold,
Right.
but like, my God, then let them thaw a little bit. But
Hey, my daughter loves frozen blueberries even more than fresh ones. So,
hey, there you go.
everyone's got their thing. For her, it's like it might as well be like a popsicle, and
Well, and I'll tell
everybody's
you, like,
happy.
just like what you're saying with blueberries, people do it with grapes all the time now
Yeah.
too. But like, when you stop taking in the absurd amount of calories and excess sugar, your palate will freak out when you start eating like really good fruit and being like, oh my God, this is how sweet this stuff is.
Yeah.
You're
Where have
like,
you been all my life?
yeah. And again, it's just like extracted fructose in high amounts is not good for you. But
Mm-mm.
God created these fruits perfectly with their fiber, with their micronutrients, not just extracting the sugars out of it. And it
Mm-hmm.
becomes this perfectly delivered vessel that gives you sweetness. It can be a dessert. It can be a nice treat. It can be a great pairing to any other food that you're eating. And it gives you everything to keep you healthy and well. So just remember, like the whole, obviously we went on a little bit of a food nutrition tangent there, but again, thermic effect of food is important. And the lower quality the food is that you're digesting, you're not hitting your macros, you're not hitting your micros, you're not getting the vitamins and nutrients that you need. You're probably not getting enough protein. I would say most people aren't getting enough protein if they actually, I had to start tracking again to really make sure I was hitting my protein goals. And I was off by like 30 to 40 grams some days, a couple times. And I was like, this is why I've plateaued. And that's okay. It like, I'm here to admit, like coaches make mistakes too. Coaches need to like eat of the own stuff that they're serving up everyone else as well. But just remember, these are all things outside of regular exercise. Everyone says you got to work out and you got to eat. It's like, yeah, but how do I need to work out? What do I need to eat? And outside of that, what else matters? So just remember, your basal metabolic rate is the amount of calories that you need to sustain homeostasis of where you're at without exercise. If you don't like where you're at, that's a conversation you need to have with a coach or a trainer. If your homeostasis, because don't get me wrong, like Ben said, I know people whose BMR is 3,000, but they're 100 pounds overweight. They don't need to eat at they don't need to even eat at BMR maintenance levels. They need to be below that and add some exercise in. But for Ben and myself, we're probably pushing 3,000 calories and we're fine. Whereas the average person, if you were eating 3,000, you'd probably be gaining weight, but it's because you don't have the lean tissue. You haven't done the work to potentially build the frame that can actually utilize all that energy that you're consuming. And on top of that, we got to remember cardio, it's good for heart health. We don't demonize cardio, but strength training is prioritized 10 out of 10 times over it, because if you're walking every day, you're still getting cardiovascular work. If you're working out at a certain pace, you're still getting some form of cardiovascular work or a little bit of aerobic and anaerobic threshold being pushed. But if all you're doing is running, you're going to pare down your muscles because running, there's nothing optimal about being a big muscular frame and running long distances. So your body's going to strip down muscle, which means muscle burns 3 times more calories than fat. So now all of a sudden you're not burning anywhere close to the calories you were. You're taking in more fat and carbs because that's what you need to run. And you're probably overeating and actually under burning on a daily basis. And the problem is cardio burns calories during the exercise. Cardio is like the highest burning eat. Strength training does not burn the same amount of calories, but it extends beyond the exercise workout of that 45 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is. So just remember, your exercise choice does matter, especially if you have the long-term end goal. That's why strength training overall, build more muscle, build more bone density, burn more calories. And it actually means, like, if you go on that vacation, you're actually less likely to gain weight if you have more muscle on you. Versus if you're the runner, you better keep your ass running while you're on vacation.
True.
Now, NEAT, the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, that again, it's what we do on top of our daily BMR outside of exercise. So it's just going for that walk every day, walking your dog, hanging out with your kids. As Ben said, doing the stuff that we actually only did like a couple decades ago, where we were much more active and involved in our families' lives, because we didn't have these notifying us every 30 seconds that we're missing out on something in our life sucks. So just remember that if you can get your NEAT up, honestly, that might be the simplest and easiest thing to start deploying on a daily basis to start burning more calories and noticing a difference. But on top of that, thermic effect of food, your food choices matter. Have a high protein diet. And the thing that I mean about that is, like, you should be having 1 gram per 1 pound of body weight. Now, if you're 300 pounds, that's going to be really hard. But like, if you're 120, 150, 200, it's not that hard. You can get it in. And if you're intentional about eating high quality protein, eating really good organic fruit, having high quality carbs, high quality fats, you will be surprised how much food you're eating for how few calories. But you'll also find it very hard to overeat. I don't know anyone that's gotten fat and out of shape off of chicken breasts, fish, and fruit.
Or potatoes. So when people say potatoes, like, "Oh,
absolutely,"
when they say the carbs are making me fat, no, we're not going to demonize carbs altogether. No, it's not carbs that are making you fat. It's like Dairy Queen carbs that are making you fat.
It's the it's the 500 calories of potatoes with the 1,000 calories of fat and shitty quality oil on top of it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so there's definitely truth to that. When you're eating whole foods, especially as undenatured foods as possible, it really is hard to like significantly overeat. A lot of the stuff that gets people in that pattern of overeating is all the flavor additives, the food additives, the enhancers, and then also super calorie dense foods that have high shelf lives, no enzymes. They don't come along with all of the stuff that nature gave us in food to help us utilize and process food. So you get all of the calories and then some, and not all of the benefits that you normally getting if you were eating whole foods.
Right. And honestly, if you're ever like feeling excess hunger, first of all, know the difference between actually being hungry and just craving.
Bored.
Yeah. Being bored. Like if you say you're hungry and I say have an apple and you say that doesn't sound good, you're not hungry.
Yeah. You're either bored or you're a 7-year-old or something like that.
If you stick to eating protein with every meal and every snack, I guarantee your cravings will go way down. You'll be satiated all day. And even if you overeat protein, it's really hard to put on body fat when you're doing that. If anything, it'll incite your muscles to be like, hey, let's just start building more muscle mass. But that's all we have for you guys today. Hope you like this shorter, more concise episode. We wanted to show you some of the metrics that I think if you're deeper in the fitness and nutrition community, you've probably heard of, but a lot of you listening are probably beginners or on the outskirts and have never heard these things. So we'd love to hear from you. So as always, smash the like button if you found this valuable and comment below. Which of these acronyms have you heard before or never heard before? We'd love to hear from you and see if you need any help in figuring out, like, how can I increase my EAT, my NEAT, my TEF, my BMR? We'd be happy to have that conversation with you, whether that's actually hopping on a call and starting in one of our programs or just commenting like, what's the top 3 things we can do? Like, we want to help you. We want to serve you. We want to be here for you. And that's why we're putting out these episodes. So as long as you can give us some likes and some interaction, so YouTube keeps trying to ping us up, that's all we ask for.
That's right.
But thank you guys again for tuning in to episode 14. And I'm Brian. That guy's Ben. And this is 4FTV, where we talk about everything from faith, family, fitness, and freedom. And we hope you enjoyed this episode, and stay tuned for next week when we release another incredible one for you.